So welcome to our webinar on Understanding the Community Food Projects Grant Program. My name is Sarah Lambertson, and I'm the Community Food Projects Coordinator at New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. We're just going to take a quick look at our agenda today. I'm going to start with an overview of who we are and then talk about the grant program. And then I'm going to give you an example of a successfully funded project, and then review the eligibility and match, and finish up with resources. And I'll take questions at the end. You're able to chat questions throughout the entire presentation, so feel free to do that. I will take them all at the end. Chatting is easier than talking, so if you don't mind keeping yourselves muted during the presentation, that would definitely be helpful. So first, a little bit about who we are. We are based in Massachusetts, and we were founded in 1998. We have a strong on-the-ground presence here in Massachusetts with farmer training and food access work. So we've got incubator farms and a food hub and CSA, and really working to build a strong network of farmers and also really make sure that our food is getting to individuals of all socioeconomic backgrounds here in Massachusetts. We also have a national presence. So we provide support to organizations interested in creating incubator farms, because that's something that we do a lot of here. And then we're also working with organizations interested in applying for community food projects grants, and then the grantees as well. And for this work, we received a training and technical assistance grant from the USDA. So we're able to provide this support to CFP grantees and applicants for free. So the Community Food Projects Grant Program, it's a program of the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. There's an RFA released annually, and I would definitely recommend that you take a look at the RFA if you haven't in the past, if you're interested in applying. Likely there may be some changes between year to year, but I think that it remains fairly consistent, so it's definitely a good resource to look at. The most recent RFA period closed in March 2015, and they should be announcing the grantees at some point this summer. And the next RFA period will be open in fiscal year 2016. I'm not sure when, perhaps the fall, it might be the winter or the spring. The Community Food Projects Grant Program was started in 1996 with the broad goals to fight hunger and to promote self-sufficiency in low-income communities. And this year gives a little bit more, it goes a little more depth to the goals. So to meet the needs of low-income individuals, increase the self-reliance of communities for providing food, promote comprehensive responses to local food access and nutrition issues, and meeting specific state and agricultural needs, food and agricultural needs. Really, in a nutshell, this program is designed to increase food security by bringing together stakeholders from across the food system. They're really looking for solutions that are going to be community-wide and really embedded in the community, as is evident from the name of the program. So when you're thinking about projects for this particular grant program, it's really important to make sure that not only are you engaging the community, but you're really making sure that you're engaging a wide swath of the community. You're really getting a diverse perspective in your planning process. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Indicators of Success, which is a report that we put together each year as the training and technical assistance recipients. And it is it's a report that we pull the collective impact from all the current grantees in a given year, and we compile it together, and it's for the general public, but it's also for the USDA, and ultimately it ends up going to Congress to help support future funding for this program. So I'm currently working on the fiscal year 2014 report, so the information I'm going to share with you is from that report, which isn't quite finished yet. We had 26 of 35 grantees active in that year respond. So what I'm talking about is coming from those 26 grantees. So this little table here gives you a look at the top 5 activities by the percentage of projects that were participating in them. So the top 2 were promoting local food purchases and food access and outreach, and then not far behind them were nutrition and health education, job skills and training, and micro enterprise or entrepreneur skills training. So that gives you a sense of what the vast majority of projects are doing, but these are just 5 of 24 different activities that were represented across these 26 organizations. So there's a really wide range, but all geared towards increasing food access and self-reliance. And they're everything from farmers markets to CSAs to youth training and job skills, community gardens, so really wide range. And of these top 5, the nutrition and health education took up the most time of all the grant programs. It was 20% collectively of the time of the program. So that was really where most of the time went, and it's been a huge push for Congress and the USDA and is a really important factor in a lot of different communities. So here are 2 more charts from that report. The first one, the beneficiaries, is just to give you a sense of not only the scale, but also to talk a little bit about the different ways that people benefit. So the first one is by access to purchasing food. So there were 35,000 customers of these projects, and they benefited through increased access to fresh and healthy food. And oftentimes the programs are leveraging WIC and SNAP and other federal assistance programs. So they're really helping the customers use the benefits that they already have. The next is food recipients. You can see there's just under 30,000 people who receive food through these programs, and that's coming through a lot of different ways. Many of those were youth receiving food through summer programs and after-school programs, but other people as well. And then the third category is training, and the trainings range widely from farming and gardening skills to business planning classes to health and nutrition and healthy eating, and to job skills. So there's a wide range of classes that people are offering to really help build self-sufficiency in the communities. This second chart here is looking at pounds of food, and again, just to give you a sense of the scale and talk a little bit about what people are doing. So this is looking at the food that was purchased, grown, and gleaned. And purchased is by far the most. You can see it's just a little under 2 million pounds of food were purchased by these programs, and all the programs that purchased food were purchasing at least some of it from small-scale farmers or farmers participating directly in their programs. So it wasn't all the food, but that was every project was purchasing some of it from there, so that's definitely having an economic impact on those communities, and they're purchasing from the small-scale farmers, as well as an impact on the sustainable agriculture. The projects are also growing food, so there's almost 300,000 pounds of food that was grown, and that was combined the projects themselves and the participants growing food in their programs, and then just over 200,000 pounds of food was gleaned. So quite an impressive amount of food. This food is being sold, distributed, donated, really depending on the needs of the project, so it's a lot is happening with this food in these projects. And this is the last chart from the indicators of success, and I just want to talk a little bit about community engagement. So I mentioned it a little earlier, but community engagement is really sort of at the core of this grant program. When you are submitting your application, it's really important to demonstrate the engagement that you've had with the community and the input that community members have had, whether that's through community meetings or surveys or however it is, but it's a really important part of the planning process and the review process. So really important to have that in mind well in advance. It's not really something that you can pull together right last minute when you hear that the RFA opens. It's really something you want to be thinking about well in advance. Same with organizational partnerships. It's really important to make sure that you're engaging more organizations just beyond your own, so that you're really getting sort of a diverse perspectives of organizations and good skill set crossover. So these 26 organizations that responded to the survey had 728 organizational partnerships, over 4,000 volunteers, and over 200,000 volunteer hours. So that's some pretty impressive numbers for just 26 organizations in 1 year. So they're really doing a lot, getting involved in their communities, and really making sure that people are involved in the work they're doing. And this chart down here at the bottom is looking at new or enhanced leadership roles created as a result of these projects. So over 500, close to 600 new roles created, and just under 500 of them were races or ethnicities other than white or Caucasian. So people are really making an effort not only to create new leadership roles, but to make sure that they're bringing in diverse voices into these community roles. So I'm going to give you an example of a past project, successfully funded project, the Healthy Communities Coalition, and Christy McGill from Healthy Communities is on the webinar. So Christy, please feel free to chime in if there's anything I get wrong. They are based in Dayton, Nevada, and their project, they were funded about 5 years ago, so they are no longer funded under this project. But their goals were to increase healthy eating in children and reduce food insecurity. So they took a lot of different approaches to this. For the first goal, they built school gardens in a variety of schools in their area. And in terms of structural buildings, all they did was hoop houses. The rest of the funding that went into there went into the farmers that were working in the schools. So they really focused on those relationships and the knowledge that those farmers were able to bring in, rather than building really elaborate gardens. They really wanted to develop those relationships, and that was one of the key takeaways when I spoke with Christy, that she said was really one of the strengths of their project, is really focusing on those relationships, because the relationships have been able to maintain through time and have been able to grow and adapt. The other thing is that they really allowed the schools to have the autonomy and independence to develop a program that worked for them. So they really saw some creative, unique ideas come from these different schools. To reach the second goal of reducing food insecurity, they were working in 3 different food deserts, and they started farmers markets, and they really focused on having extremely low overhead. So they had no manager, and they were using free space. And as a result of this, they were able to waive the fee for farmers and just ask them to contribute food, which was going to the food bank. They also had youth helping work at the farmers market so that farmers were able to spend more time in the fields, and they allowed people to use their SNAP benefits. So they were really focusing on benefiting the farmers as well as benefiting the customers, as well as creating an approach that would help with longevity. And these farmers markets are still running even though the funding has finished. Additionally, they offered training. New farmers were learning from experienced farmers. They did some work on food policy, and they also were running food pantries. And they really focused on getting the clients to become volunteers so that people were engaged in the work that they were doing. They had them working in the gardens and distributing food. So like I mentioned at the beginning, the really strong focus on relationships. They have a lot of different ways to engage people, so really taking a multifaceted approach. They've been able to continue this programming after the grant has finished. So I thought this was a great example. One, it's from Nevada, but also I think it really embodies what this grant program is about, and hopefully can serve as a nice example for all of you. So I just want to talk a little bit about eligibility. Eligible applicants are nonprofits, tribal organizations, and public food service providers. And they do need to have experience in community food work, either working with small farms or getting food to low-income communities, or doing job training and business development connected to food-related activities, or just generally efforts to reduce food insecurity, either through food distribution or improving access. So it's important to be able to demonstrate your prior experience in one of those areas before you apply. Additionally, so partnership, I mentioned earlier, the organizational partnerships is a really key component in this, and it's really important that not only that you are engaging partners throughout the project, but that you have partner support at the time of your application. So you'll need to get letters of support from a handful of other partners that really want to be involved, and it's great to have them from sort of diverse backgrounds and with diverse skill set. The partners don't need to be eligible applicants, so it doesn't have to be a nonprofit or a tribal organization. They can be a different type of organization. Only the lead applicant needs to be eligible. And then the last thing is that if you are working towards your 501c or your federal recognized nonprofit status, but you don't have it yet, you can apply through a fiscal sponsor. So as long as they have it, you're all set to apply. So I also want to talk about the funding. So this program does have a dollar-for-dollar match, which is definitely something that a lot of organizations really struggle with. So I want to mention it up front so that it's something you can really spend the time thinking about. So if you request $400,000, you need to demonstrate that you have $400,000 in match. It can be in-kind or cash, but it can't be federal funds. You can't use another federal grant to match. You can use state funding as long as it doesn't originate as federal funding. So it's definitely something to be thinking about well in advance and really starting to wrap your head around it before, if you're planning to apply. And you do need to have it demonstrated at the time of application, not at the time of award. Additionally, there is past funding. This past year, they have $9 million available in funding, and they're getting ready to announce the recipients for this fiscal year 2015. I anticipate that it's about a similar amount in coming years. And they've got two grant types. So there's an implementation grant, which is up to $400,000 for up to 4 years. It doesn't need to go 4 years. It could be less, but the maximum per year is $125,000. There's also planning grants, which are up to $35,000 for up to 3 years. And those tend to be community food assessments or feasibility studies or other projects like that that are really laying the foundation for future projects. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a training and technical assistance grant. So all the assistance and resources we have, we're able to provide free of charge for all of you. So I encourage you to take a look at our website, nesfp.org/CFP. There's a lot of helpful information there, documents, links to websites, really, really helpful stuff to just get you thinking about it sort of from start to finish. We also offer one-on-one assistance. So if you go to our website, you'll see that there is a link for an intake form, and you can fill that out with information about your organization, about your project, and about the support that you're looking for. And then I follow up with a one-on-one conversation with you to really understand more about what you're looking for. And depending on your needs, we may refer you to one of our technical assistance providers, or I may provide the help myself. And the topics vary widely. Some people are interested in getting help on starting a food hub, and they really want to talk to someone who has that content expertise. Somebody has their project all worked out, and they really want to talk about how best to align their project goals with the goals of the grant program. And some people are applying for a federal grant for the first time and have never used grants.gov, and so they want support with that. And grants.gov can be a little bit tricky if you've never used it before. So, and there's a lot of other things that people could talk about. So we're here to help with that now and during the RFA period. And then the last thing is that we have webinars. So there's past webinars recorded on our website, and then we've got upcoming webinars as well. Actually, next week we have one on planning and community engagement, and there's information and registration for that on our website. So this is just a look at the resources that we have, and I am also available, so feel free to email me if there's something that specific that you'd like to talk about. So at this point, I am open to take any questions that you have. And I'm not sure if everybody has found the chat function, but if you go up to the top of the screen where the green bar is, there'll be a chat link. If you click on that, you'll see the chat window, and you'll have the opportunity to type questions in there. So I just got a question about matching funds, asking how other grantees have dealt with this. I will say, you know, this past RFA period was my first time providing support. So we worked with a lot of organizations, but my sample size is fairly limited. It really is one of the more challenging aspects. The in-kind time is definitely a big one. So organizations will really try to figure out what it is that you need to be careful about what you can figure out, what you can donate, but what other people can donate for you. Sometimes people have had land donated or volunteer time donated, and it's tough to get up to $400,000, but if you start thinking creatively and getting letters of support saying that organizations will donate in kind, that's definitely a big way that people have done it. And I think if you're able to get, if you have any foundation funding or anything like that, where the foundation will agree to serve as a match, those are a couple of approaches that people have taken. So someone asked about how important it is to have a low-income target audience to serve, and that's definitely crucial for this grant program. You need to be working with a low-income population. You don't need to be exclusively working with low income, but every project that, when I mentioned the indicators of success, 100% of them are working with the low income population, and that is definitely one of the core things that our reviewers are looking for. So really important to take that into account in your planning, and not just make sure you have them represented, but make sure that they're actively engaged in the planning process and you're really taking their interests at heart when you're planning the project. So are there any other questions from anybody? Question about ineligible project costs such as garden irrigation equipment. That is a good question. I believe garden irrigation equipment would be eligible, but I would definitely encourage you to take a look through the RFA. They do allow for some building and equipment, but there are some limitations on it, but they allow more than some other grant programs. Someone asked when the grant is due. So at this point, the grant is not accepting applications. So, and I do not know when the next grant period will be open, but it will be sometime in fiscal year 2016. So it could be as early as this fall. It might not be until next winter or spring. I'm happy to add any of you to our outreach list, and we're going to put the word out as soon as we hear anything about it. Would a processing washer station at a co-op be eligible? That's a good question. I am not completely sure. That's a good question, Kelly. I might need to get back to you or whoever asked it of you. So I need to get back on that one.
So this is Christy, and this was a couple of years ago, so they may have changed their procedures, but things like irrigation and washing equipment were allowed as long as they were supplies and not equipment. So I think it was a $1,000 mark. So if you put it under supplies, it would be fine.
Thank you, Christy. Someone did mention they can hear side conversations. I'm not sure if that's coming from here or from somewhere else, but if you're not muted, if you could mute. Someone asking about the kinds of nutrition efforts that have occurred in the past and if they involve tribes. I would say I don't know the whole scope of it. I think that it has been incredibly wide, but I would say that yes, that they've involved tribes. There have definitely been a lot of tribal organizations that have received this, but I do know that it's also a big push to get more tribal organizations involved. And I think the nutrition efforts, they range everything from really just healthy eating classes and teaching people about how to eat well, to cooking classes and really, the hands-on demonstration. A lot of times people will integrate sort of community gardening with healthy eating, so they'll not only be teaching people how to grow their own food, but also connecting that with how to eat well and how to cook. So there's a lot of different ways that people take that. And I think that, and actually there's a great website, Why Hunger has a story database of an incredible number of past projects, and there's a link to that on our website, and that is a great resource to look at if you're wondering some past projects. They really show they do a great job of showing kind of in a really interesting format past projects. So another question on how would funding job training look if the site also provides services for SNAP employment and training? Debbie, could you give me a little bit more information on that question? So Christy, it looks like we've got a question for you. Wondering about the grant reporting. Is it doable or is it really onerous? So Debbie is wondering about voluntary SNAP participants and agencies for services, and they're wondering if funding would be allowed to support job training and other SNAP components. That is a good question, and I'm not completely sure. I think it would definitely depend on the way that the training is put together, but I think it seems like if you're working with SNAP participants and job training and building self-sufficiency, it sounds like the sort of project that would be eligible, but it would probably, depends a little bit on some of the particulars, I think. So one thing I will say about the grant reporting, you know, I think that at least from what I'm aware of, reporting to the USDA, there is not a lot of reporting, but the indicators of success that I mentioned, that is something that the USDA requests of all the grantees to fill that the survey out so that we're able to do that. And there was a gap. It was done between 2005 and 2011, and then when the Community Food Security Coalition was doing it, and then this is a new grant for us, so we're just starting it now. So this past year was the first year we collected it, and we'll be collecting that in the future. And it's not particularly onerous as long as you are tracking information throughout the year, so the number of participants served and pounds of food, and if you're tracking all that information, putting it into the survey is not so bad, but really important to think about that up front. Kelly's wondering what other funding has been used to match this program, and are there states involved in any cases? So I think the funding varies a lot. State funding can be a match as long as it doesn't originate as federal funding. So that is definitely something to work out, whether or not, if you have a state grant, making sure that it's not originating as federal. I think foundation funding is something that is often used because you can often get a foundation to agree to say that that can be used as a match. In-kind is used a lot, in-kind time. So donations from other organizations or land donations if you're working with a farm or other donations of that sort.
So this is Christy. Some of the things that I think in Nevada we can really use as in-kind is the time and the place. For example, all of our school gardens were in-kind because the school supplied the water. They supplied the space, they supplied the teaching time. So when people say that this is a hard grant to match, I don't think so at all. I think you can get really creative, and because they allow for that in-kind, I think if you kind of think outside the box, and once you start adding up, because it is a collaborative process, once you start adding everything up, it's fairly easy to get that match.
Great, thank you, Christy. So Kelly mentions that Food Bank of Northern Nevada and 3 Squares of the Southern Nevada Food Bank are both good places to look for match, which is great. Thank you, Kelly. So I'm not sure if there are any more questions out there. I'm definitely happy to keep answering them if there are. So we'll hold on a couple more minutes just to make sure that we've answered all the questions. And if there's something that comes up later, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions. And there'll be a recording of this that I'll send out to all of you. So if any of you joined late, we will have a recording. So Kelly, you're just asking if a more focused project can succeed, or were you referring to a particular one? Were you referring to Christie's project with the large number of partners? Oh, the data from my indicators, great. So there were definitely a wide range. Some projects were working with a lot of partners, and some were working with a lot fewer. So it's not as though everyone had, 20 partners for every project. Some just really had a lot. So they certainly can succeed with fewer partners, and even just a core group of 3 or 4 maybe, if you really make sure that you have strong letters of support and have really thought about it. So you don't have to go out and get 15 letters of support. It's really about finding some core organizations that will work well with you. So don't go out there and try to get every single thing possible. So Kelly is suggesting that we switch over to the conference line so everyone can talk. So I will be able to join there. If there's anyone on the webinar who is not at one of the cooperative extension sites, Kelly, would you be able to provide the conference call-in information in case they're interested in joining us there? Actually, I've got it here. So I'm going to provide the information here. If there's anyone who is not available or who's not in one of these rooms, can call this. Oh, there we go. So if anyone is not at one of the cooperative extension sites at this point, we're going to switch over to using the VTC network, and you're welcome to call in. I'll be calling in so I can be listening in and be part of the conversation. But at this point, we're going to end this component of the webinar. I'll leave this screen up for just a minute so that you all have a chance to copy down this information.